I wonder what Steve Case thinks of this. Of course, you know Steve quite well, the AOL co-founder, the chairman at CEO Revolution. Latest, The Rise of the Rest. Kind enough to join us now. Steve, very good to have you back.
Always good to be with you, Neil.
What do you make of this back and forth of Twitter and policing content and maybe working in concert with government authorities and the rest? It's a mess. We don't know all the details, but so far Elon Musk is saying he doesn't like what he sees. Do you?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of levels to it. At one level, obviously, Elon's a great innovator, and he's moving into Twitter relatively quickly, making a lot of decisions, but starting to realize that even though building jets or rockets that could take you to the space or electric vehicles is really hard, some of the issues around culture and media and society that Twitter is involved in have a nuance to it. I think he's starting to understand that. And there's also a broader trend, as we've talked about in the past, around policy becoming more integrated in terms of innovation. That for a lot of years, Silicon Valley was operating kind of on its own. And now policymakers, not just in Washington, Brussels and other places, are starting to weigh in. I think that's going to be a mega trend over the next decade.
I'm wondering if the mega trend includes, politicians from both parties weighing in on successful media juggernauts, high-tech juggernauts. FTC, for example, trying to put the kibosh on Microsoft's $75 billion bid for Activision Blizzard. Where are we going with all of this?
Well, each one is a little bit different, and we'll see what happens with the FTC and Microsoft. There's been some discussion today about the move and what's going to happen next. So we'll see, let that play out. But it doesn't surprise me that there's more scrutiny now of Silicon Valley, more scrutiny, even a backlash against big tech. I actually wrote about this 5 or 6 years ago when I wrote my first book, The Third Wave. I said as the internet becomes more integrated in society, more central to society, more central to industry, it's going to naturally kind of get more attention from policymakers and regulators. And also now that the internet's sort of meeting the real world and starting to impact things like healthcare and food, some pretty basic needs and pretty large industries, you're also seeing more of a government intervention there. Some of this can be unhelpful in terms of really slowing down innovation, but sometimes it can be helpful, including what Congress did this past summer. The Chips and Science Act to invest more in R&D is important, to bring semiconductor production back to America is important, and also they authorized $10 billion for regional hubs, which ties in with our work around Rise of the Rest. How do we not just back the entrepreneurs on the coast, places like Silicon Valley or New York? How do we back entrepreneurs everywhere, all across the country, create jobs everywhere, all across the country? So that is a really welcome development.
Yeah, I've been intrigued by what you're trying to do on the ladder and create startup opportunities. But I'm wondering when the backdrop is so anti-tech, I don't know how long that lasts, Steve, but it does seem like the browbeating that technology stocks have been getting, and that's probably an understatement, is unrelenting. And maybe it will relent soon. But wouldn't that make what you're doing doubly difficult? Because smaller versions of them don't seem to be welcome versions. So how do you fight?
I don't agree with that. I think this is more of a backlash against the major companies that have such a significant impact on business and society. Actually, there is broad bipartisan support for entrepreneurs. I just was at the Capitol earlier this week, met with a bunch of Republican senators and Democratic senators. They're all focused on what they could do to make sure America remains the global leader in innovation, AI, robotics, things like that, and also to create a more inclusive innovation economy, backing more people, backing more places. That's a big thrust. It has broad bipartisan support. So there are obviously many things that divide this nation and also divide Congress. This issue of innovation, entrepreneurship is one of the few areas that really people are united in trying to make sure this next wave of innovation is more dispersed all across the country. And the great thing about the stories in the book, we've now invested in 200 companies, 100 cities. We've done our bus tours to nearly 50 cities. There's remarkable entrepreneurs building remarkable companies in cities that would surprise you. Dozens of cities that are emerging as strong startup ecosystems, startup hubs. It's the next 10 or 20 years. While Silicon Valley will still be in the lead, and New York and Boston will also continue to be strong, we're going to see dozens of other cities rise up, and that's why I wrote the book. It's a story that most people don't understand.
But do most people understand math? In other words, that if you're looking for a low tax, less regulatory environment, that could be explaining a lot of what's going on.
Well, to some extent, but if you look at venture capital over the last decade, 75% of the venture capital dollars have gone to just 3 states. California, New York, Massachusetts, 75%. What we're trying to do is spread them to more. But some of the cities that do, some of the states that have low taxes, such as a Texas or a Florida, have not gotten their fair share of venture capital. It's starting to change. I think that will accelerate in the next decade. And we're here at Revolution, we're really focusing on policy and really focusing on place. We think the convergence of those two over the next decade will be a lot where a lot of opportunities are. For example, we backed a company in Illinois called Tempest. It's doing some amazing things around precision medicine, something that historically people would think would be in Boston or Silicon Valley. It's in Chicago. We've also backed companies in Chattanooga and Indianapolis and Denver and Nashville and Detroit, many other cities all around the country. And this is the story that needs to be told, which again is why I wrote the book. I think people who read the book really will be surprised by how many amazing companies that are going to be some of the giants of tomorrow are building all across the country, not just on the coasts.
Now, I don't know whether Senator Elizabeth Warren has had a chance to read your fine book, but I'm just wondering, given her anger at a lot of the richest tech giants, I could go to Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and on down, there's an animus there that's building. And now she is maybe the poster child for that, but she's not the only one. And I'm wondering whether it's just the sheer riches of tech giants that could rein them in.
Well, again, I think it's more focused on the biggest companies and the wealthiest entrepreneurs, which is, again, not surprising. But if you look at what's happening all across the country, it really is quite encouraging. It is this next generation of companies really taking on some big areas, such as how we stay healthier, what we eat, how do we invest, how we move around, how we learn, some pretty basic things, building on the strengths of those cities. And part of the reason there's this political backlash is in the last 10 or 20 years, the innovation economy has been mostly limited to the coast. The disruptions often have destroyed jobs in cities in the middle of the country, and we haven't been backing enough new companies in the middle of the country to offset the job loss with job gain. As a result, many people, as you know, in many parts of the country feel left out and left behind. By backing more entrepreneurs in these rise and rest cities, we can start changing that. We can create companies that are creating thousands of jobs in the middle of the country, not just creating these big tech companies on the coast.
Well, there's the concept. Keep me posted, Steve. Always good having you on to sort of get the big picture view of all of Steve Case, of course, the co-founder of AOL, trying to create a lot more AOLs as the world moves on.